For months, the maritime war in the Black Sea looked relatively contained. That just changed. Ukraine has now moved beyond striking warships and port infrastructure. It has started hitting Russian oil tankers, vessels linked to the export of crude oil that funds Moscow's war effort. And that decision could carry consequences far beyond the Black Sea. Let's break down what happened. Over the past few days, Ukrainian maritime drones struck 2 oil tankers tied to Russia's so-called shadow fleet. These vessels were sailing toward Russian ports in the Black Sea, reportedly empty and preparing to load crude for export. The attacks were filmed, documented, and publicly acknowledged by Ukraine. Importantly, the strikes took place inside Turkey's exclusive economic zone. That matters. An exclusive economic zone is not territorial waters. It is still international water, but the coastal state has rights over resources like fishing and drilling. So legally, this was not an attack inside Turkish sovereign territory. The ships were heavily damaged and unlikely to resume operations anytime soon. Then a third incident occurred off the coast of Senegal. A tanker that had recently departed a Russian port suffered an explosion. There's speculation about drone involvement, but evidence is unclear. It may have been something else entirely. Still, in the span of days, 3 vessels connected to Russian oil exports were disabled or destroyed. That is not random. It signals a shift in Ukraine's strategy. Until recently, Ukraine focused on oil refineries and production infrastructure inside Russia. The goal was to limit Moscow's ability to process crude into higher-value products like diesel and jet fuel. Now the target appears to be something even more sensitive: Russia's ability to move crude oil to buyers abroad. And that's where this gets serious. Oil exports are the backbone of Russia's state revenue. If shipping becomes riskier, buyers demand discounts. Insurance premiums rise. Delivery reliability drops. India, China, and other buyers may still want Russian oil, but uncertainty changes pricing power. If Ukraine can introduce enough instability into the export chain, Russia may be forced to sell crude at deeper and deeper discounts. At some point, that begins to directly squeeze the federal budget. There is also a military humiliation aspect here. Russian commentators are already asking an obvious question: where is the Black Sea Fleet? If tankers heading toward Russian ports can be hit in international waters, what does that say about Russia's maritime control? The uncomfortable answer is that deploying major naval assets to escort tankers would expose those ships to the same Ukrainian drones. In other words, Russia may not be able to guarantee security in waters it once dominated. That is strategically damaging. But the consequences do not stop with Russia. Global oil markets are sensitive to disruption. Even modest uncertainty can nudge prices upward. Shipping insurance rates could climb. International trade routes could become more cautious. And then there is the most dangerous escalation scenario. If Moscow cannot effectively defend its own export routes, it may retaliate elsewhere. The most obvious target would be Ukrainian grain shipments. Those ships carry food to global markets. If Russia begins striking or intimidating grain vessels, the ripple effects could extend into food prices, supply shortages, and political instability in import-dependent regions. That would internationalize the conflict in a way we have not seen in months. And here's the strategic paradox. Such retaliation would hurt Ukraine economically, but it could also drag the war back to the center of global attention at a time when fatigue is clearly setting in. Food insecurity tends to focus minds quickly. A renewed grain crisis could shift diplomatic pressure, revive negotiations around shipping corridors, or force new international involvement. In short, what looks like a tactical drone campaign may actually be the opening of a broader economic front in the war. Ukraine is no longer just targeting Russia's ability to fight. It is targeting Russia's ability to earn. And if this escalates into reciprocal strikes on commercial shipping, the Black Sea may stop being a regional battlefield and become a global pressure point. That is why these tanker strikes matter. Not because of the ships themselves, but because of what they signal.